If you're frustrated that you can't get that smooth, even blend that you're aiming for, even though it looks like it should be so easy to do, then you're not alone. Not being able to blend acrylic paint well often makes new artists give up altogether. I'll show you how a few simple and easy changes can improve anyone's blending. These are often overlooked, but can make a massive difference to your painting. And they're certainly the most common questions that I've been asked about blending over the years. Plus, at the end of the video, I'll share a few tips and tricks that I've picked up over time that really helped me when I was a beginner artist. Question 1. How thick or thin should my paint be? So paint comes out of the tube in different consistencies depending on the brand, paint type and quality. We can thin down the paint with either water or a medium to a consistency that makes it easier to blend. Or it might come out of the tube in a pretty good consistency to begin with. The consistency we want also depends on what we're painting. So a sky like one of these two paintings, we might want it a little bit thinner and more transparent. For this painting, I wanted a more solid background, so I made the paint a little thicker and it gave me a more opaque finish. I would recommend that beginners start with a consistency something similar to mayonnaise or like emulsion paint that we paint on the walls of our houses. Acrylic Basics by Liquitex has a pretty good consistency out of the tube if you add a couple of drops of medium to it. So why don't we just use Acrylic Basics for all of our blending? Well, this is because more affordable student quality paints often don't have the same pigment levels as more expensive artist quality paints. They also generally have fewer colours to choose from, and they might not give you the same coverage as a higher quality paint, which means that they might not cover other paint colours as well, and they might not even cover the bare canvas as well. Student quality, more affordable paints shouldn't be totally ignored though. They're really good for underpainting, and when I paint skies, you'll often see me use Acrylic Basics in titanium white, and I add artist quality paints to this to get the right colour and pigment level that I want. As for adding either water or medium to your acrylic paint to thin it down, both will work. Just be aware that water will also dilute the binder in the paint, which means that it's more likely to soak down into the canvas. Plus, even the smallest overpouring of water can thin the paint down too much, so use it sparingly. Acrylic mediums won't affect the binder agent in the paint as much, so this means that it will sit more on top of the canvas. And you can also use mediums to give different finishes like a gloss or matte effect. Number 2, why does my paint look streaky? I hear this a lot. It could be that the paint quality just isn't good enough to get an even coverage, or that too much water has been added. Here are 2 red paints that I bought to test this out. The first one was a couple of dollars that I bought from a dollar store. The second one is an artist quality paint that cost me about $20. As you can see, the consistency of the first one is quite thin, it doesn't have very good coverage, and it's a little streaky. The second one has much better coverage, it goes on nice and smoothly, and has had a little painting medium added to it. Some colours are also just naturally more transparent. Here I have phthalo blue, permanent rose, and opera rose, and even though they're a good quality paint, they're still more transparent than other colours and don't cover the canvas quite as well. Sometimes applying too much pressure to the canvas when you're painting can also cause streaking. Try using an even, gentle touch. You can see here that the brush is really just gently gliding on top of the canvas. And also, if the brush is too small for the area that you're painting or the bristles are too coarse, this can also cause patchiness and streaking. Which leads us to the next question: what brushes are best for blending? Use soft brushes to get an even, soft blend. If our bristles are too coarse or firm, it will be extremely difficult to get a nice, smooth blend. The size of the brush should be proportional to the area that we'd like to blend. Trying to blend a large area with a small brush can lead to patchiness and the paint drying out before you cover the canvas. A large brush covers more area in a shorter time, so there's less chance of the paint drying out. It's really important that the brush should be just barely damp with any excess water removed. After rinsing my brush, I always dab it on either a paper towel or a cloth to get rid of any extra water. You can also use mop brushes or other fluffy brushes to create some nice effects when blending. If you watch my tutorials, you'll see I often use them to create simple and easy clouds and skies. Question 4. Why does the paint dry so quickly on the canvas? Someone said to me the other day when they're trying to do a large blend, it feels like they're painting with glue. This was possibly because the paint was too thick, but it could also be that the paint was drying too quickly on the canvas. Your environment can really affect how fast your paint dries. If you're painting outdoors in the sunshine, or if there's a breeze, or even sitting next to a fan or air conditioner can make your paint dry quicker. You might want to add some retarder or slow dry medium to your paint. This will help slow down the drying time and buy you time to perfect that blend. This bottle cost me about $16. It lasts for months, maybe even years, because I only use a few drops at a time. Just follow the ratio guidelines on the bottle and buy yourself some time. If we want to slow the drying time of paint on the canvas, then we need to stop it drying on the palette. You can spray your palette with water, but a game changer for me was buying or making my own wet palette. To make your own, all you need is a shallow container, some paper towel, and either parchment or baking paper. We'll fold the paper towel to size, put a few layers in the bottom of the container, cover that with water, and then drain off any excess water. Then we'll lie the parchment or baking paper over the top, pressing down to get rid of any air bubbles. And it's that simple. This will help to keep your paint wetter for longer. One small caveat: if you put too much water in there, it can make your paints too wet. So use your judgment and experiment a little until you get it right. When you're finished, you can cover it with a lid or some cling film or food wrap, and your paint should stay wet for several hours or even overnight. I'm going to share with you some tips that I learnt the hard way, so hopefully you don't have to. When you first start blending, practice on smaller canvases and work your way up to larger ones. If you start trying to do a large blend on a big canvas right away, it's going to be much more challenging and your paint is more likely to dry on the canvas. Make up enough paint in advance that you're going to need for that blend. I've learnt this the hard way over and over again. And if you don't make enough paint to start with, halfway through the blend you have to stop and make up more paint, all the while the paint is drying on the canvas. And if you've mixed a particular colour, it's unlikely that you'll get that exact same shade again. If you're mixing your own colours, mix them thoroughly with a palette knife on the palette before you start blending on the canvas. This will avoid any strong streaks of pigment going through your blend that haven't been mixed in thoroughly. If you're really struggling to blend two colours together, mix a little of each colour on the palette so you have a separate colour and use this to paint in the middle. Sometimes I find if I angle the brush a little more and use more of the back of the brush at the end of a blend, it really softens out those lines and blends everything together nicely. I keep an old canvas around to test my colours on it before I start painting on my main canvas. This is a good way to test the colours that you're using are going to blend together nicely, and it gives you an idea of whether or not the consistency is good. Rinse your brush really well in between each colour. Believe it or not, I use a bucket to rinse my brush out because it holds a lot more water. It may not be the prettiest thing, but it does the job really well. Tell me about your blending problems in the comments, or maybe you have a different tip of your own. I hope you can put the things I've shared today to good use when you practice your blending, and the best way to practice is by trying one of these tutorials here.